The hospital room in Sacramento smelled of antiseptic, and the steady beep of machines was the only sound that kept me grounded. I lay in bed, completely immobile, my body wired with IVs and monitors. Every small movement sent sharp jolts of pain through my back, the L4 and L5 vertebrae reminding me why I had spent 20 years building houses and lifting beams. I had spent my life strong, crafting walls and roofs, and now I couldn't even lift a glass of water without help. It was day 4 after surgery. The painkillers blurred my thoughts, but I could feel a creeping sense of vulnerability I hadn't known before. My independence, once taken for granted, was gone. The quiet hum of the hospital felt like the only safe place left, or at least I thought it was. A knock at the door pulled me from my haze. I expected a nurse, maybe someone delivering medication. "Come in," I croaked. The man who stepped inside wasn't wearing scrubs. A cheap suit, a scowl, and a manila envelope in hand. He glanced at my brace, my charts, then back at me. "Derek Vance? That's me. If you're here to fix the TV, it's already broken," I tried to joke, grimacing in pain. He didn't smile. He tossed the envelope onto my lap. "You've been served, Mr. Vance. Lawsuit for harassment and stalking. Preliminary hearing date inside. Have a nice day." The envelope felt heavy in my hands, though it barely weighed anything. I stared at it like it had poison inside. Harassment? Stalking? I couldn't even stand without help. When I tore it open, the contents hit me like a punch. Sloane, my ex-wife, claimed I had followed her for months across 4 cities, leaving her terrified and constantly watched. Dates, times, blurry photos, eyewitness reports, all supposedly proving I was a dangerous, obsessive presence in her life. I felt a cold sweat I hadn't felt since the surgery. I couldn't move. I couldn't defend myself. And yet, I was suddenly the villain in a story I hadn't written. I never thought the most peaceful place in the world would be a hospital bed. Yet here I was, accused of crimes I couldn't have committed. Have you ever felt powerless while someone tried to destroy your life? And then the letter arrived, each page detailing acts I hadn't committed. What would you do if someone accused you of stalking while you were completely bedridden? Before we continue, if you think being falsely accused sounds terrifying, subscribe now so you don't miss how this nightmare unfolds. Seriously, if this could happen to me while I was trapped in a hospital bed, consider what might happen in your life tomorrow. I opened the envelope fully. The words on those pages were enough to make my blood run cold. Sloane wasn't just suing me for money, she was trying to trap me, to make my life unbearable. Being confined to a hospital bed is nothing like you see on TV. Pain grips every inch of your body. Your limbs feel heavy, and every simple task requires assistance. I spent my days navigating this new reality. IV drips, physical therapy sessions that left me in tears, and the constant fear of moving the wrong way and undoing weeks of surgery. The surgery had been brutal, 6 hours under anesthesia, titanium screws holding my spine together. The doctors were precise, the procedure successful, but my body was fragile. My mind wandered to bills piling up, insurance claims, and the thought of paying Sloane her lifestyle maintenance alimony while she pursued this lawsuit. I had finally moved to Sacramento to recover near my brother, thinking the past had finally let me go. I was wrong. Sloane had never been the type to let go. Our marriage ended a year ago, but she thrived on control and drama. Every interaction with her had been a test of patience, and now she had weaponized the courts. Her lawsuit wasn't just about money, it was about keeping me under her thumb, making me appear dangerous and obsessed. Even as I lay helpless in that hospital bed, she crafted a narrative designed to trap me. She had collected every scrap of supposed evidence, building a timeline of terror I hadn't even lived. The thought that she could spend months plotting against someone too incapacitated to respond filled me with disbelief and anger. I spent hours staring at the lawsuit papers. Dates, times, locations. I could see her logic, twisted though it was. According to her claims, I had been following her across Los Angeles, Santa Barbara, Monterey, and San Francisco, committing acts of harassment while my legs were practically useless. Even the simplest contradictions stunned me. She claimed I was seen on a beach in Malibu on the same day I was in the ICU post-surgery. She had blurry photos of a man wearing my old leather jacket, yet that jacket had been in storage for months. Her new boyfriend, Garrett, provided eyewitness accounts of my supposed movements. Each claim was carefully timed to make me appear omnipresent, and I had no immediate way to defend myself. Marcus Thorne, my divorce lawyer, arrived within an hour of my call. He had handled Sloan before and knew her well enough to recognize the danger in her current scheme. "Derek," he said, scanning the envelope, "I've seen bitter ex-spouses, but this is a whole new level. She isn't after money, she's trying to destroy your life and reputation." He went through the evidence with me. Photos, hotel logs, GPS claims, and eyewitness statements. Each piece of proof could be countered, but it required a plan and patience I hadn't had the luxury to muster in months of pain and immobility. Fear, anger, and helplessness surged at once. I had been stripped of my independence, yet my life was being publicly misrepresented. I felt trapped, unable to move, yet I needed to fight. The injustice stung sharply, more than the pain from surgery ever could. I stared at the papers again, trying to process how far Sloan was willing to go. The calm hospital room now felt like a cage, but Marcus's presence gave me a sliver of hope. He promised a way forward, a method to turn her own falsehoods against her. How could we prove I had never left this room while she accused me of stalking her across 4 cities? If you've ever been powerless while someone tried to control your life, hit like and subscribe. What happens next will show exactly how far she went. The moment I started reading Sloan's lawsuit, the absurdity of it all became clear, but that didn't make it any less frightening. She had documented every claim as though it were gospel truth. Blurry photos of a man wearing a leather jacket, alleged sightings at hotels and yoga studios, times, dates, and GPS coordinates that supposedly placed me at her side in 4 cities. I ran through the list mentally, cross-referencing with my own reality. On the day she claimed I had been outside her Monterey hotel, I had been in the hospital, groggy from painkillers, with nurses adjusting my brace every hour. She was presenting fiction as fact, and the sheer audacity of it sent a chill through me. Her new boyfriend, Garrett, had added witness statements of my supposed harassment. According to him, he had chased me off a beach in Malibu. The irony was unbearable. That day, I had been intubated for surgery, surrounded by a team of doctors monitoring every heartbeat. Each piece of evidence came apart under scrutiny. Hospital logs and medical records placed me firmly in bed or undergoing procedures during the exact moment she claimed I had appeared across the state. Photos of a man with my build and jacket? That jacket hadn't been out of storage for months. Her claims weren't just false, they were carefully designed to look real. Dates and times matched the sightings, as if someone had meticulously scripted my supposed movements. My first thought was shock. The second was a simmering rage. She wasn't just trying to scare me, she was attempting to rewrite reality. Marcus pointed out the obvious. The court often weighs the evidence heavily, even when it's circumstantial. Blurry photos, eyewitness claims, GPS coordinates, all seemed authoritative at first glance. I realized that if we didn't respond with irrefutable proof, I could be ruined without ever leaving my hospital bed. Lying in a hospital bed, I felt the weight of helplessness like never before. My body couldn't move, my independence was gone, and yet I was suddenly facing a legal battle that required me to prove presence, absence, and sanity all at once. Fear and frustration collided. Every claim in Sloane's lawsuit chipped away at my sense of security. I wasn't just fighting a false accusation. I was fighting the narrative she had crafted to paint me as dangerous. Each paragraph I read intensified the fire in me, the need to prove her wrong, to reclaim control over my life. The emotional strain was relentless. Painkillers dulled the edges of reality, but they couldn't shield me from the anxiety of knowing a single courtroom decision could change my life forever. I had to think strategically. I had to turn her own story against her. Marcus and I started analyzing the timeline she had created. Each claim was a thread we could follow. Each photograph a piece of paper we could counter with proof of my actual location. The thought of exposing the lies, of demonstrating that she had orchestrated an elaborate false narrative, gave me a flicker of hope. I realized that Sloane had underestimated one thing. I wasn't entirely helpless. My hospital bed confined my body, but it didn't confine my mind or my determination. We would gather evidence, medical logs, digital timestamps, GPS data, and anything else that could show the truth and turn her accusations into the very thing that would destroy her credibility. If you've ever been trapped by someone's lies, subscribe now and watch how the truth comes out. This is one story you cannot afford to miss. And if you're still hesitating, comment below why you wouldn't protect yourself. Think carefully. It could be someone like Sloane waiting to rewrite your life next. The stage was set. Her claims were bold, her narrative tight, but we had a plan to expose every falsehood, every manipulated moment, and every lie she hoped would hold in court. As I lay in that hospital bed, Marcus began outlining our plan. He called it the ironclad alibi. The goal was simple in concept, but complicated in execution. Prove that every one of Sloane's claims was false using verifiable, indisputable data. "We need more than your word," Marcus said, tapping on his laptop. "We need medical logs, digital timestamps, GPS data, everything that can't be argued with. We'll let her testimony speak first, then watch her narrative crumble under objective evidence." The first step was the hospital records. Every nurse entry, every medication swipe, every physical therapy session was recorded with precision. These were moments in time she couldn't fabricate proof that I had been immobile when she claimed I was stalking her across California. I felt a flicker of empowerment. The hospital, which had seemed like a prison days ago, was now the source of my defense. Every beep of the monitor, every badge swiped by the staff, was a timestamp against her story. Marcus worked tirelessly, pulling together my electronic health records. Each entry documented when I pressed the call button, when my vitals were checked, and even when my meals were delivered. Every detail was time-stamped, creating an airtight record of my existence. Next came digital data. My smartphone had been my only connection to the outside world, mostly for podcasts and news. Using Google Maps timeline and Apple location services, Marcus verified that my device had stayed in the same hospital room for weeks. There was no movement across cities, no GPS pings at hotels, no evidence of stalking. We also hired a private investigator to dig into Garrett, Sloane's boyfriend. It didn't take long. Garrett had been impersonating me, wearing my vintage leather jacket in photos, and creating evidence of my presence at hotels and beaches. The level of deceit was staggering. They had staged my existence. Seeing the full picture, I felt a surge of strength I hadn't experienced since before surgery. The man who had been helpless, drugged, and bedridden was now holding the upper hand. Marcus explained the next step: document everything in a way that the court could easily understand. Each sighting, Sloane claimed, was matched with timestamps, medical records, and GPS data showing I hadn't moved. Every photograph of Garrett in my jacket became Exhibit A of fraud. The transition from victim to fighter was almost physical. Pain still shot through my back, but the weight of helplessness lifted. I wasn't just defending myself. I was exposing manipulation, deceit, and criminal behavior. What would you do if someone tried to erase your reality and replace it with lies? Even as we built this airtight defense, doubts lingered. Could the court see through Sloane's performance? Would the judge give weight to her emotional testimony? Marcus reassured me. Facts win. Always facts. Let her speak, let her lie, and we'll hit back with evidence she cannot deny. We rehearsed the sequence. First, she presents her claims. Then, each is countered by hospital logs, GPS records, and photos exposing the impersonation. The final blow would be the proof of my physical incapacity during her so-called sightings. The week passed in a haze of preparation. I spent long hours on physical therapy, not just to heal my body, but to ensure I could face the courtroom and demonstrate credibility. Every step I took in that hospital, every labored movement, became part of the narrative that would dismantle her false claims. The morning of the hearing, sunlight streamed weakly through the hospital window, but I barely noticed. I was focused on the next challenge: getting from the hospital bed to the San Francisco County Courthouse. Every movement was painstaking, every joint aching, but there was no option to delay. Marcus had arranged a medical transport van equipped for my motorized wheelchair. I was strapped in carefully, my back brace ensuring my spine remained stable. For weeks, I had been immobile, dependent on nurses for even the smallest tasks. Now, I was about to confront the woman who had tried to destroy me while I couldn't even stand. As the van navigated the streets of Sacramento northward, I rehearsed the plan in my mind. Sloane would speak first, detailing her narrative. Every statement she made would be methodically countered with evidence of my true location and incapacity. Arriving at the courthouse, the tension hit immediately. Sloane sat at the plaintiff's table, radiant and composed, every gesture choreographed to look like vulnerability. Garrett sat behind her, a smug expression plastered across his face, clearly pleased with the story they had built. Seeing them together, I felt a mix of fear and determination. This wasn't just a legal battle, it was a test of control. She thought I was powerless. She thought that my immobility and the hospital would protect her from exposure. She had underestimated what a determined man could achieve with the right strategy. Marcus leaned close and whispered, "Let her feel safe. Let her testify. Every lie she tells will be evidence against her. We're not just defending. You'll see her collapse under her own story. The courtroom was imposing. High ceilings, polished wood, the echo of footsteps, and the serious expressions of clerks and bailiffs. Judge Holloway, a stern and focused woman, presided over the case. Her reputation for fairness was known, but she had zero patience for manipulation. I felt a momentary pang of nerves. This was about more than winning the case. It was about my reputation, my financial security, and proving that even bedridden, I wasn't defenseless. Every eye in the room would watch. Every word spoken would carry weight. Marcus set up our evidence. Hospital records, timestamps, GPS logs, and photos. Each item was like a carefully aimed arrow, ready to strike the false narrative Sloan had built. The tension was electric. Would the evidence we had gathered be enough to expose Sloan and Garrett? Could a bedridden man, armed only with records and strategy, triumph over a manipulative ex-wife and her accomplice? Subscribe now. This next part is the moment of truth you cannot afford to miss. The courtroom is set, and every second counts. Marcus gave me a reassuring nod. We've done everything we can. Now it's time for the truth to speak. I gripped the sides of my wheelchair. My back screamed in protest. My hands shook, but my mind was sharp. Sloan believed she had orchestrated a perfect crime. She had no idea that her own lies would be the weapon that destroyed her. The courtroom settled into a tense silence as Judge Holloway called the session to order. Sloan's lawyer stood first, spinning a story of terror and fear. 45 minutes of carefully crafted testimony painted me as a relentless stalker, omnipresent across 4 California cities. I stayed seated in my motorized wheelchair, back brace secured, hands gripping the armrests. Pain shot through my spine with every small adjustment, but I didn't let it show. Marcus whispered, "Let her speak. Every lie strengthens our case." Sloan's voice trembled as she described her encounters with me. Tears, sobs, and shaky gestures portrayed vulnerability. Garrett, sitting behind her, nodded in confirmation at every accusation. They were confident, and that confidence was a trap, one we were ready to exploit. When Marcus finally stood, the atmosphere shifted. He approached the judge, USB drive in hand, a calm and controlled force. "Your Honor," Marcus began, "my client would like to offer a brief rebuttal. This will take no longer than 5 minutes." The screen flickered to life, displaying hospital records, every physical therapy session, nurse visit, medication administration, and MRI, time-stamped with precision. Marcus went through the claims one by one. Malibu Beach, sighting? Derek was in surgery. Monterey Hotel encounter? Derek was undergoing MRI scans. San Francisco street lamp appearance? Derek's phone and hospital logs proved he hadn't left the room. Each piece of evidence hit like a hammer. Sloan's carefully choreographed narrative began to crumble. The courtroom absorbed the reality. Derek had been confined to a hospital bed, incapable of leaving for weeks. Yet, she had accused him of stalking. The final blow came from the private investigator's findings. Marcus revealed Garrett had been impersonating me, wearing my vintage leather jacket in public photos, creating fabricated evidence of my presence. The courtroom murmured. Sloan's confident composure wavered. Garrett's smug expression faltered as the photos and social media posts appeared on the screen. The stalker she had portrayed was, in reality, her own boyfriend acting out a story they had invented. Marcus paused, letting the evidence sink in. Your Honor, this is not conjecture. This is documented, verifiable proof that the plaintiff staged the alleged harassment to secure financial gain. Every head in the room shifted, the air thick with disbelief. Sloane could no longer control the narrative she had built for months. The courtroom was electric. Gasps, murmurs, and shocked expressions filled the air. Some spectators whispered about Sloane's audacity. Others debated the morality of Garrett's role. I stayed seated, feeling a mix of relief and vindication. Pain still radiated through my back, but it was overshadowed by the satisfaction of seeing truth triumph over manipulation. Marcus methodically dismantled every accusation, piece by piece, leaving no room for doubt. The judge leaned forward, her gaze sharp. Mrs. Vance, do you have an explanation for this evidence? Sloane stammered, flustered, claiming bribery, manipulation, and conspiracy. Marcus shook his head, letting the court witness her desperation. This was the moment we had anticipated, her lies exposed under the weight of undeniable proof. Comment below, do you think Sloane deserved the fallout? Or was Garrett equally culpable? As Marcus wrapped up, I felt a surge of empowerment. Months of helplessness, pain, and anxiety led to this moment. My hospital bed and brace, once symbols of limitation, had become instruments of strategy. The judge called a brief recess. Sloane and Garrett whispered furiously. Their plan, built on deception and arrogance, had collapsed before their eyes. The courtroom was quiet, waiting for the final judgment, the verdict that would decide everything. The tension was unbearable. Every heartbeat echoed in my ears, every breath a reminder of how close the moment of vindication had come. After a short recess, the courtroom reconvened. The air was thick with tension, everyone sensing the approaching resolution. Sloane and Garrett whispered furiously, casting anxious glances at the judge. Judge Holloway's gaze swept the room, settling on Sloane. Mrs. Vance, she said, her tone firm. The court has reviewed the evidence presented by both parties. This includes hospital records, medical logs, GPS data, and verified social media posts. Sloane's face tightened. Every moment she had relied on confidence and performance, but now her house of cards trembled under the weight of undeniable proof. The strategy she had spent months crafting was unraveling in real time before the court's eyes. The judge laid out the facts with precision. Every accusation Sloane had made was contradicted by objective evidence. She had staged sightings using Garrett. She had fabricated harassment across multiple cities, relying on blurry photos and manipulated statements. Mrs. Vance, the judge continued, this is not merely a frivolous lawsuit. It is an attempt to exploit the legal system to damage Mr. Vance while he was physically incapacitated. Such actions constitute perjury and filing a false report, both criminal offenses. The courtroom fell silent. Sloane's jaw tightened, Garrett's smugness faltered, and murmurs filled the gallery. Derek, seated in his wheelchair, felt a mixture of relief and triumph. Months of helplessness and fear had led to this vindication. The judge addressed the financial implications. Sloane's alimony payments were immediately suspended under the moral turpitude clause in their divorce agreement. Committing fraud against Derek had nullified her right to financial support. Furthermore, the district attorney would review the case for criminal charges related to perjury and filing a false police report. The evidence was strong enough that prosecution seemed inevitable. I exhaled deeply. This wasn't just legal victory, it was justice. The woman who tried to weaponize the courts against me had been exposed, and the law sided with truth, facts, and integrity. As Sloan and Garrett were led from the courtroom, arguing and blaming one another, I sat quietly, letting it sink in. I had stayed in my hospital bed, immobilized and in pain. Yet my strategy had dismantled a carefully constructed campaign of lies. For the first time in months, I felt fully in control. The fear, helplessness, and frustration that had once consumed me were replaced by empowerment. I had defended not just my reputation, but my dignity. Judge Holloway's verdict was a reminder that truth and preparation can overcome even the most audacious deceit. Sloane's plan had failed spectacularly because facts have weight and justice cannot be easily manipulated. I realized that victory wasn't about revenge, it was about standing firm, letting evidence speak, and trusting in a fair system. Pain and immobility didn't define me. Resilience and strategy did. Sitting back in my wheelchair after the courtroom chaos, I felt a strange calm. The tension that had gripped me for months was finally gone. The fear of being falsely accused, the helplessness of immobility, and the frustration of watching lies spread, none of it mattered anymore. I realized that patience, strategy, and careful preparation were more powerful than brute force or rage. Even when my body had betrayed me, my mind remained sharp, and that clarity had won the day. The hospital bed that had felt like a cage was, in fact, the starting point for my victory. This experience taught me that justice isn't always fast, but it is achievable. Lies and manipulation can feel overwhelming, but facts hold a weight that falsehoods cannot match. If you face someone trying to control or manipulate you, patience and evidence are your allies. Resilience isn't just enduring pain or setbacks, it's actively turning circumstances to your advantage. Even while bedridden, I had found ways to build a strategy, gather proof, and ultimately reclaim control. We've all encountered people who try to manipulate situations for their own gain. Sometimes they attack your reputation, sometimes your peace of mind. How we respond defines who we are. Do we cower, or do we stand firm with clarity, planning, and strategy? If you've faced similar challenges, like and share this story. Let others see that resilience and strategy can triumph over deceit. Subscribe to the channel for more stories of clever revenge and life lessons, because someone, somewhere, might try to rewrite your reality tomorrow. Looking back, I see that victory wasn't just about exposing Sloan or winning the court case. It was about proving to myself and anyone watching that even in your weakest, most helpless moments, you can fight back with intelligence, patience, and determination. We don't always get to choose the challenges we face, but we do get to choose how we respond. And sometimes, the quietest man, the one who seems the weakest, is the one who can hit the hardest. The doors of the San Francisco County Courthouse opened, and sunlight washed over me. After months of helplessness, manipulation, and fear, I finally felt unburdened. Every step, or rather, every movement in my motorized wheelchair was a testament to patience, resilience, and strategy. Sloan and Garrett's chaos behind me didn't matter anymore. They had crumbled under their own deception. I wasn't just free from false accusations. I was free from the anxiety and control they had tried to impose. The weight on my shoulders wasn't gone, but it had shifted. It was no longer the burden of fear, but a sense of accomplishment. As I rolled through the courthouse plaza, I could feel the magnitude of what had been achieved. Justice wasn't just served, it had been engineered carefully, step by step, even while I was confined to a hospital bed. This wasn't about revenge for revenge's sake. It was about reclaiming agency, proving that truth and preparation can defeat lies, and showing that even in moments of extreme vulnerability, you can fight back. I reflected on the months of fear and doubt. If I could endure them, if I could turn pain and helplessness into a strategy, then anyone could face seemingly impossible situations with resolve. I leaned back, letting the California sun warm my face. The city around me bustled with life, unaware of the courtroom drama that had just unfolded. I realized that this was only one story, one example of how deception and manipulation can arise in everyday life. The world is full of situations where ordinary people are tested, pushed to the brink, or falsely accused. And sometimes, the quietest, most patient individuals are the ones who rise to the occasion. Stay tuned, sometimes the quietest man hits the hardest. Like, comment, and subscribe to witness more stories where justice meets strategy. Seriously, if this could happen to me while I was immobilized, what's stopping someone from being targeted tomorrow? Subscribe now to stay informed and prepared, so you're never caught off guard. And if you're hesitating to subscribe, comment below and tell me why you'd leave yourself defenseless against deception, lies, or manipulation. Your story matters, and so does being prepared. This final moment leaves the audience reflecting, engaged, and eager for more, while delivering the final subtle push for subscriptions and interaction.